9:30.
But we do want to get right into the updates on the Siders family.
Yep, all four of them appeared in court. Gary Siders Sr., who's 73, we know he's the grandfather. Christina Siders, 67, who's the grandmother. And then Gary Siders Jr., who's 36. He's on the bottom left right there. That's the father. And then Elizabeth Siders, who's 33, who is the mother of
all
what
16,
her attorney says he believes she is the mother of all 16 children that were found in that 12 by 12 room inside of that house there in Vinton County. Amy Steigerwald has more on this from this morning.
Attorney Tommy Stoley represents 33-year-old Elizabeth Siders. He is asking a judge to lower her bond. Stoley confirming he believes Elizabeth is the mother of all 16 children found in the Hamden home last week.
I have previously stated that she does not necessarily characterize herself as a victim, but the investigation from the prosecutor's office, the investigation from my office is still ongoing.
West Virginia records show she married Gary Siders Jr. in 2008 when she was 15 years old. Siders Jr. was 18. As the investigation into her and 3 other Siders family members continues, Highland County prosecutor Anika Collins tells 10 TV she has been appointed special prosecutor in this case. Details surrounding the timeline for the case are unclear at this time.
We are looking easily probably a year or more before this case will work out.
But former Vinton County prosecutor Jim Payne offered his take on how the legal process could play out. Payne does not have inside knowledge on the case, but because of his experience, shared what could come next.
They have to make sure that they get all the evidence that's available so that they can provide a proper defense for their clients.
Payne expects each of the 4 Siders family members to be tried separately and says jurors may have to be pulled from outside Vinton County.
Yeah, and we've talked about that with the whole juror situation because this has become a national story. Everyone is talking about this. Everyone wants answers and justice for these 16 children. So it's going to be hard to find people in Vinton County that don't know about this.
Right, and it could be argued it'd be harder to, equally as hard just about anywhere else.
Right.
And now, obviously we brought in a special prosecutor out of Highland County to deal with that. But yeah, the one attorney said that we're probably looking, well, it was the former Vinton County not the state's attorney, Vinton County prosecutor. We call them prosecutors here. We probably won't see this go to trial for another year and a half at the earliest. It's going to be so tangled, I think, for the next months just to figure out what exactly happened, this backstory. It's something that we're still trying to figure out because obviously, as Amy mentioned in there, we looked at marriage records to try and figure out how did we get
this
get here?
Way back. We know she had her first child at 15, but she was also married to
15.
Gary at 15.
When we started looking into this last week, because let's remember, this is a case that in my mind has been going on for months, but this just started last week. And Carla and I started digging into some of the public records that are available out there, and we knew from some information that was given to us by family that the two crossed the border and got married in West Virginia. Well, okay, there's a handful of counties that border right there across from Gallia County. So I managed to find their marriage record in Mason County, West Virginia. They were married March 31st, 2008. At the time, Elizabeth was 15 years old. Gary Jr. was 18. And that's all according to that marriage record there. So people are probably scratching your head. You can't get married at 15. Well, at the time in West Virginia, you could. West Virginia, for the longest time, and still to this day, has a child marriage law that lags way behind everybody else. At the time in West Virginia, the law was with your parents' consent and a judicial, the permission of the judge, you could get married as young as 14 in the state of West Virginia. At the time, in 2008, Ohio and Kentucky still only, required 17 as that minimum. In 2023, West Virginia tried to catch up with that because they kind of went, okay, it's time to maybe move our laws up in line with everybody else. It got through the House to move it up to 18. Well, the Senate threw in an amendment in there to drop it back down to 16. So they moved it up a couple of years from the minimum age, but in West Virginia, you can still get married at the age of 16, according to this new law in 2023. That is now still the lowest age in all of the country that you can still be legally married.
Yeah, I mean, long story short, they were very young. 15 is incredibly young to get married. And I mean, investigators have to go back 15 years and comb through 15 years of information of this marriage and the 16 children that have been had within the 15 years, basically. I mean, there's so much still to unpack here when it comes to how this whole family even got to this point.
Right. And I mean, we know that, because in that court hearing that happened, a week ago today.
Right. It's only been a week.
Right. We got all of the birthdays of the 16 children.
Right.
And as we did the math, the oldest was born just 2 months after they were married. So 18 years ago.
And it was almost like she was having a child every 10 months.
Right. It was every 10 months
almost.
to every year and a half.
Like she was having a new baby, and that's a lot of kids in a short period of time. And again, this all goes back to, how did investigators even land on this house? We know it's kind of tucked away in Vinton County, Appalachia. The neighbors never saw anything, but investigators have continued to say there was a parallel investigation going on. But we do know that records from Vinton County, they say Gary Siders Jr., he was charged with 4 counts of public indecency, and it was all kind of in the same week, May 23rd, May 27th, the 29th, and the 31st. And court records say that he exposed himself in public. So we don't know what exactly, again, led investigators to the house, to that room to find those 16 children, but they ended up there, and then they found those kids, and now it's like they're, having to backtrack and figure out how we even got to this point. So they're being very tight-lipped about things. Obviously, this is still an ongoing investigation, and now court proceedings have already started, but I thought we would learn more from this preliminary hearing that happened yesterday. I don't think we really found out, too much, like nothing very alarming or new, but I mean, they're still on bond for $300,000.
Yeah.
We know Elizabeth, her attorney's basically believing that she might be a victim in all this and was asking for a lower bond. I don't believe that was granted.
Right. And then the attorney for Gary Siders Sr. is also asking for a bond reduction, basically citing incompetence, his mental capacities to understand the court hearings. That was something that came out of that as well yesterday.
I remember when we were watching the very first court hearing, I mean, the judge was trying to repeatedly ask them, like, please say yes.
Yeah.
And
she was like, I need a verbal yes.
verbal confirmation. And that wasn't registering. And they said they were kind of like being like, I can't hear. And then finally she got that out of them. And then just another thing from that, hearing that happen when they first appeared before a judge, like virtually that we were watching in the newsroom, Elizabeth started to say something to the judge, and we couldn't hear exactly what she said because it was on video, it was virtual. But the judge immediately interrupted her and was like, you have a right to remain silent. I really wonder what she was saying, what she was trying to get across to the judge in that moment.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah,
a lot to unpack.
There's a lot to unpack there. And, some of the details that we've talked about too is, the empathy really is with these kids because everybody wants to know, one, how can we help? And two, what's going on with them? We know that they're being placed into foster care. We don't know when and where. We'll never find that out.
And they need serious care. I mean, the investigators were saying how the 18-year-old couldn't write their name. They don't know how to speak. They've never been to school for the most part. I mean, describe them as livestock was kept better than this.
Right.
So it's hard to even imagine what state they're in now because now they're pulled away from each other. They have to be. Yeah. They don't have their mom. I mean, it's very traumatic last week for them.
Yeah.
It's been traumatic, I think, their whole life, but maybe that's their normal. It's just sad.
Right. And I mean, we look also too at some of the background of the parents too, and I'm going to go ahead and cite the CBS affiliate out of Huntington here, WOWK. They went and pulled a little more of the marriage records out of Mason County, West Virginia. And in that, they found that Elizabeth only completed 8th grade. Gary Jr. completed ninth grade, which is your freshman year of high school. So those two, that was when they completed school, and the addresses listed in the marriage record, they grew up 2 houses away from each other. So, we're kind of getting a little bit more background into how this all started. Yeah. And I mean, we knew they were Gallia County, Gallipolis area. So yeah. So we don't know. We know the family has multiple ties to different counties. We know that, the Gallia County area then kind of hopscotched around. We know there's ties to West Virginia, Wisconsin, but also back here in the state of, Jackson County, Pike County, obviously Vinton County. Now, they lived in that house in Vinton County for about 4 years.
Right.
And we also did find out that house that they were living there on Omer Street is currently being managed by a trust. The woman who owned it passed away sometime last year. And since then, it has been held privately, by a trust that doesn't appear to be in the state. When we looked at land records of it, that trust is based out of like Nevada.
Right.
Or, I believe somewhere way out west. And as we've talked to folks down in Hamden and MacArthur, people are like, we didn't know people even lived there.
No, the neighbors are absolutely shocked. I mean, Libby has interviewed the neighbors. Carla's been down there. I mean, all of their sound is very similar in the sense of like the disbelief that there were 16 children living in this house. Because if you've seen the house, it looks like it was not suitable for anyone to be living in there, let alone a house full of 16 children. So it's just shocking. And I mean, I think the big questions that we still are wanting to know is, are there records of the children? Where were they born? Were they born in a hospital? Like, where were these kids born, and how have they gone off the radar for this long? So we're going to keep following this story. We will definitely have more on this coming up later this week as well on 10 TV and on our 10 TV app.